is Meg Mooney. Meg came to Central Australia 28 years ago to work as a desktop publisher and for the literature bilingual program in remote Aboriginal communities of west of Alice Springs. Meg has a previous career in geology and combined this background in natural science with her experience in remote Indigenous communities when she got a job with Turrinjirra Landcare, setting up a community seed bank. Meg then moved over to Turrinjirra's Land and Learning program and has now worked with this program for 13 years. Please come up, Meg, and tell us more about it. Please make her welcome.
First of all, I'd like to acknowledge all the people from many Aboriginal groups that I've worked with in Central Australia: Aranda, Luritja, Pintabee, Pitjantjatjara, Walbri, Alyara, Amadra, and probably some others that I've forgotten. At WOMAD this year, I heard Buffy St Marie, an old hero of mine, talk about her work for decades developing education curricula on Native American culture for schools and universities in the US. Her focus has been on people learning Native American science. I think Australia has a lot to learn about the importance of Indigenous knowledge about country and the passing on of this knowledge to young people, Indigenous and non-Indigenous. The Land and Learning program is a two-way science education program that Turrinjirra Council has been running for 17 years. The program works with remote Indigenous community schools in Central Australia to help plan and carry out two-way science education. And on the left, I'm just going to go through, if I can, quickly and say who was in the photos. This is Marie Ryder from Mulga Bor planning a lesson with Turrinjirra plant photo cards, which we will see more of later. And on the right is Rita Turner from Mount Liebig, an assistant teacher, and elders from that country teaching children about plants using specimens we've collected on a bush trip. And I'll use the English names of communities because people here might know them better. Land and Learning builds on students' knowledge from their families about the local bush and links this to Western science. And these photos are of a project I worked with for several years. On the left is Jane Brimbox, who's an aquatic ecologist, who was monitoring these springs near Santa Teresa after they'd been fenced to keep out mostly feral horses and cattle. And so Jane is helping a student from Santa Teresa School with a survey sheet. In the centre slide on the right with the snowy white hair is Veronica Dobson, who we met in Josie's talk. She's a traditional owner for these springs and is talking to the students about her time travelling around these springs with her family when she was a child and her knowledge of that country. And on the right are some students in the classroom drawing and describing preserved specimens of the small water animals that are used for monitoring wetlands, some of which they'd collected themselves at the springs. Land and Learning was originally funded by the Federal Government's Natural Heritage Trust and has since been funded by a range of organisations. For the last 4 years, it has been funded by Saro Education. The program has been used as a model for a new Saro Indigenous Science Pathways project, which will roll out in remote Australia this year with substantial funding from BHP. Land and Learning has worked with 27 Central Australian Indigenous community schools, mostly in remote communities, and not all those communities are on this map. It's just the map that I happen to have. In these communities, students speak an Indigenous language as their first language, usually. And the schools that I've worked with in recent years are to the west of Alice Springs and Luritja schools of Haasbluff, Mount Liebig and Papunya, and Santa Teresa to the southeast. So this talk will focus mainly on those schools. These are some of the strategies that Land and Learning has found to be effective. First of all, we work with schools where there is interest and support from the principal. The principal or head teacher of a school makes far more difference about what goes on in that school than anything else, including government policy. We support Indigenous assistant teachers to direct themes and activities as part of Indigenous language and culture programs in schools and to involve elders and others in the community. This includes teaching Indigenous languages, which most students understand much better than English. Indigenous language and culture is currently an elective in NT schools and is only taught if teachers, particularly the principal, have enough interest. Land and Learning works closely with 1 or 2 NT Department of Education, Language and Culture support staff in the centre. There are only a handful of fully trained Indigenous teachers in the centre, so on-ground support for these assistant teachers is very important because the time of the class teachers is very limited. In that slide we have on the left Vanessa Marks, who's an assistant teacher at House Bluff, and Alison Umbajimba, the elder on the Walker, teaching students about plants from a bush trip. On the right, Rita Turner, again from Mount Liebig, is teaching students about endangered animals using a poster which is blown up there on the right, which NT Department of Education people developed with support. Strategy number 2 is linking learning about Western science to Indigenous language and culture. We already saw this in an earlier slide. Here we have Vanessa Marks again on the photo on the left, collecting archididi, Solanum centrale, with students. It's a very popular food still. In the centre is one of the students with a pressed specimen of archididi and a label that he's written in literature about that plant. And on the right is one of our parts of plants worksheets. This is the literature version of that plant, of that worksheet. The next strategy is focus on the bush. This is very important. Students are more at ease in the bush than the classroom. The program builds on knowledge they already have about the bush from their families, makes Western ecology relevant and accessible to them. And deep learning about country occurs out bush with elders who still have strong knowledge in most communities. Bush trips are a way for families to be respectfully involved in schools, and they don't have to be for very long. They can be for an hour or 2. In the photo on the right of that slide are some students from House Bluff doing a survey of animals in country near the community. On the left, there is one of the literature rangers, the Central Land Council literature rangers, at a camp at Murungi, southwest of Mount Liebig, that had students from several different schools. He's helping the students weigh a mammal, I think a sandy inland mouse, which were caught in elliot traps that the students helped the rangers put out. And in the centre is an elder from Laramba community teaching students about making several different bush medicines. Sorry, I've just gone a bit too quickly there. Another strategy is linking bush activities to literacy work. Either English or local language survey sheets are usually part of field activities. Worksheets and literacy activities have lots of pictures and are aimed at appropriate literacy levels. Hopefully you can see those. Those animal silhouettes are things that we use a lot in animal survey sheets. That one is about country growing back after fire. It could just be about some particular habitat. I won't go through all those because I think I'm going to run out of time. This is some plant worksheets. On the left, this is a Western Arundel one from when I worked with Holmesburg a number of years ago. Someone is drawing a habitat, picture of a particular habitat, which in this case is a mulga tree. It's a mulga habitat, and down the bottom is a drawing of a honey ant, which honey ants live under mulga trees usually, and some mulga apples, which are galls that grow on mulga trees. On the right, there's a pressed specimen of Calitris with a label that a student has written, and also a photo of Wonganu Eragrostis areopoda, which is a grass that people used to collect seed from a lot and make into damper, with a student's description and literature of it. Another strategy is to integrate bush work with classroom work, and this is an example from Mount Liebig. The students on the left are collecting branches of Santalum lanceolatum, plum bush, which is commonly used. The bark of this is commonly used to make a bush medicine. The photo in the centre shows the students. It's a page with photos of that activity which was used in the classroom. The students wrote in literature descriptions of particular activities. The next photo shows a page from the book that I made. I typed up the student sentences about each page and made it into a book. And the last photo on the right is Rita Turner and Roderick Cantamara from Mount Liebig reading this book back to the students. And you could have heard a pin drop in that classroom. And believe me, that's not a common occurrence in those classrooms. Yeah? Right, okay. Right, moving along. Strategy number 6. Involve rangers and scientists as much as possible. And this sort of speaks for itself. I'll just say very briefly, that's Jared Anderson, one of the literature rangers, talking to Mount Liebig students on a fauna survey that the rangers were doing with Rachel Poltridge. And on the right, there are some of the Santa Teresa rangers helping students fill out survey sheets at Salt Springs, which is one of the springs near Santa Teresa. Another strategy is relevant resources. These are very popular animal and plant photo cards, which have a photo or photos of the animal or plant on one side with a name in one of a range of a number of possible local languages or English, and then information in English on the back. The photo on the left shows these cards, in this case bird cards, being used by Roderick Cantamara at Mount Liebig, the assistant teacher there, or one of the assistant teachers. And he had shown these bird cards to the students on a number of occasions, and now he was playing a game with them where he had the card turned around so they couldn't see what bird it was. And he was giving various descriptions of that bird, and they had to guess what it was. And they were so excited by the game that they were sort of jumping up and rushing towards him to try and guess. I'll better flick through quite quickly now. Oh, yeah, right, okay. So these are some more of our resources. We've made 119 booklets documenting activities with different schools. Some of them are templates that can be used with other schools. Also made booklets on various land management issues. And the centre booklet is a resource booklet we have for people working with schools on two-way science in Central Australia. Very quickly, I'll just go through these slides on why land and learning works. Builds on students' interest and knowledge about the local country. It involves parents and elders from communities. It combines Western science and Indigenous knowledge. It provides the extra support schools need to plan and teach two-way science in the bush, including with local ranger groups. The need for that support is not to be underestimated. Teachers are pretty flat out doing what they have to do already. This is Cheryl Briscoe from Mount Allen collecting native bee honey from a bloodwood tree, and then illustrations from a booklet we made about the native tree life cycle. So it also provides non-Indigenous teachers with a knowledge of local ecology needed to link language and culture activities when they occur with science. Why two-way education about the bush is important. Aboriginal people are major landowners in the centre and the NT as a whole, and current students have future responsibility for looking after this land. And Indigenous ecological knowledge and Western science are increasingly used to manage Aboriginal land. That is a ranger from a literature ranger, Terence Abbott, who's also a traditional owner for these springs west of Mount Liebig called Ilpilly. So that he's in the classroom talking about their work to manage these springs, and on the right we've got a school camp out at those springs and he's talking to the students there. It used to be beautiful clear springs and rain in paperbark forest, and now it's been completely trashed by camels, but there's some hope that something can be done to rectify that. And that's it.